I still remember the exact moment I realized my life wasn't mine anymore. It was a Tuesday morning, and I was standing in my own kitchen, holding a cup of coffee that had gone cold because I'd been waiting for permission to drink it. Permission to drink coffee. In my own house. My name is Sarah Mitchell, and for 3 years I lived under the thumb of a man who controlled everything: what I wore, what I ate, who I spoke to, and even when I could use the bathroom. This isn't just a story about surviving domestic abuse. This is about the subtle, insidious ways someone can steal your identity, your freedom, and your soul, one small rule at a time. Before we dive into this journey, I want to ask you something. If this story resonates with you, please hit that subscribe button and give this video a thumbs up. And in the comments below, let me know what city or country you're watching from. It helps me understand how far these stories reach and reminds others they're not alone, no matter where they are. When people think of control, they imagine dramatic scenes, screaming, violence, locked doors. But my prison had no visible bars. To the outside world, Marcus was charming, successful, and devoted. Our friends envied our relationship. My family thought I'd found the one. Even I believed it at first. The control started so small I didn't notice. A suggestion here, a concerned comment there. That dress is a bit revealing, don't you think? Maybe you shouldn't spend so much time with Rachel. She's kind of a bad influence. I'm just worried about you. Looking back now, I can see the pattern clearly. But when you're in it, when you love someone and they're telling you it's all because they care, you don't see the cage being built around you. Not until it's already locked. I met Marcus at a coffee shop in downtown Seattle. It sounds cliché, but that's exactly where it happened. One of those trendy places with exposed brick and overpriced lattes. I was 26, working as a graphic designer for a small marketing firm, and I'd just gotten out of a relationship that had fizzled out from sheer boredom. Marcus was different. He was 32, a financial consultant with an impressive resume and an even more impressive smile. He noticed me struggling with my laptop and offered to help. Within 15 minutes, he'd fixed my technical issue and asked me to dinner. The first 3 months were a fairy tale. Marcus was attentive, generous, and incredibly romantic. He sent flowers to my office, planned surprise weekend getaways, and listened, really listened, when I talked about my dreams and fears. He remembered tiny details I'd mentioned in passing. He made me feel seen in a way I'd never experienced before. My friends loved him. My mother was already planning our wedding in her head. Even my usually skeptical father approved after one golf outing with Marcus. "He's a good man, Sarah," Dad had said. "Don't let this one get away." So when Marcus suggested I move into his condo after 6 months of dating, it felt natural. Exciting even. The place was beautiful, a 2-bedroom with floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking Elliott Bay. My cramped studio apartment couldn't compete. I should have noticed the red flags during the move. The way Marcus reorganized my belongings to make better use of the space. How he suggested I donate most of my furniture because his was nicer. The comment about my book collection being cluttered that ended with half my books in a storage unit. But I was in love. And love, I thought, meant compromise. The first rule came disguised as concern. We'd been living together for 2 months when Marcus casually mentioned over breakfast that he worried about me walking to work. "Seattle's changed," he said, scrolling through his phone with a frown. "There was another mugging downtown last week. What if something happened to you?" I told him I'd been walking to work for 3 years without incident. The exercise was good for me, and I enjoyed the 20-minute stroll through Pike Place Market, especially in the morning when the vendors were setting up. "I know, baby, but humor me," he said, reaching across the table to take my hand. "Let me drive you. We can grab breakfast together every morning. Wouldn't that be nice?" It did sound nice. So I agreed. Within a week, our morning routine was established. Marcus drove me to work and picked me up exactly at 5:30 p.m. If I was even 5 minutes late coming down to the car, he'd call, his voice tight with worry. "Where were you?" I was getting concerned. The concern felt sweet at first. Someone cared enough to worry. Someone wanted to keep me safe. But then the rides became different. Marcus started commenting on what I wore to work. "That skirt's a bit short, isn't it? Or that top shows too much cleavage. You know how men are. He'd suggest I change, always with a smile, always with the explanation that he was just looking out for me. I started modifying my wardrobe. Nothing dramatic, just choosing the longer skirts, the higher necklines. Marcus would nod approvingly and say things like, "Much better. You look so classy." Then came the questions about my coworkers. Who had I talked to that day? What had we discussed? If I mentioned a male colleague, Marcus's jaw would tighten. Is he the one who's always hanging around your desk? Or does he know you have a boyfriend? I found myself downplaying interactions with male coworkers, then avoiding them altogether. It was easier than dealing with Marcus's mood during the drive home. The lunch hours were next. Marcus started texting me around noon. "What are you having for lunch?" At first, it seemed like he was making conversation. Then he began sending suggestions. "You should try that salad place on 3rd Avenue. Much healthier than the food trucks." When I mentioned I was grabbing lunch with my coworker Emma, Marcus's response was immediate. "Again, you had lunch with her last week. Don't you think you should focus more on your work?" I told Emma I was too busy to do regular lunch dates. She looked hurt, and I felt guilty, but Marcus seemed so much happier when I stayed at my desk during lunch. 3 months into living together, Marcus proposed a financial partnership. He'd noticed I was stressed about money, my student loans, the rent I was no longer paying but still felt I should contribute to somehow. He had a solution. We'd combine our finances. "You can quit worrying about bills," he said. "I make more than enough for both of us. Put your paychecks into our joint account, and I'll handle everything. Investments, retirement, savings, I'm good at this stuff, Sarah. Let me take care of you." It made logical sense. Marcus was a financial consultant. He knew about money in ways I didn't. And the relief of not having to manage bills and budgets was tempting. I signed the paperwork to set up our joint account. My direct deposit was rerouted. Marcus smiled and kissed my forehead. "You won't regret this, baby. I'm going to take such good care of us." For a few weeks, everything seemed fine. Then I tried to buy a new laptop. My old one was dying, and I needed something reliable for work. I went to transfer money from our joint account and found that I didn't have independent access. Every transaction required Marcus's approval through his banking app. When I asked him about it, he seemed surprised. "Oh, that's just the security setting I set up. With so much money in the account, we don't want any unauthorized purchases, right? Just let me know what you need, and I'll approve it." The laptop he approved was cheaper than the one I wanted. "This one has all the same specs," he insisted. No point in wasting money on a brand name. I tried to argue, but Marcus's expression shifted, not to anger, but to disappointment. "I thought we were partners, Sarah. I thought you trusted my judgment about finances. That's literally what I do for a living." I felt foolish. He was right, he was the expert. So I accepted the laptop he chose. The pattern repeated with other purchases. "New work clothes? Do you really need more clothes? Your closet is full. Dinner with friends? Can't you cook something here? We're trying to save money. A birthday gift for my mother? That's expensive. Let me find something better." Every purchase became a negotiation, then a confrontation, then eventually something I just stopped asking about. It was easier to not want things. My world was shrinking, but it happened so gradually that I didn't notice. My morning commute was controlled. My work wardrobe was controlled. My lunch hour was monitored. My friendships were questioned. My finances were managed. And through it all, Marcus maintained that everything he did was out of love and concern. "I just want what's best for you," he'd say, pulling me close. "Everything I do is because I love you so much. You know that, right?" And I'd nod, because I wanted to believe him. Because the alternative that I'd willingly walked into a trap was too terrifying to consider. 6 months in, I realized I hadn't seen my best friend Rachel in weeks. We'd been inseparable since college, sharing everything from terrible apartment leases to worse dating stories. But lately, every time I made plans with her, something came up. Marcus would have a work emergency that required me to be home. Or he'd planned a surprise dinner. Or he'd be feeling sick and needed me to take care of him. The cancellations piled up until Rachel stopped reaching out altogether. When I finally noticed and tried to call her, Marcus overheard the conversation. I was laughing, genuinely laughing for the first time in weeks, telling Rachel about a mishap at work. I didn't notice Marcus standing in the doorway until Rachel said she had to go. You seemed really happy talking to her, Marcus said, his voice neutral. Yeah, I've missed her. I think we should get together this weekend. Rachel doesn't like me. It wasn't a question.
What?
No, she doesn't. I can tell. She always gives me these looks, like she's judging me, judging us. Marcus sat down heavily on the couch, his shoulders slumped. Maybe she's jealous. She's been single for a while, right? Maybe seeing you happy makes her uncomfortable. I started to protest, but Marcus continued, his voice taking on that wounded quality that always made my chest tighten with guilt. I'm not saying you can't be friends with her. I would never control who you spend time with. He looked up at me with those sincere eyes. I just wonder if she's really a good friend to you. Does she support our relationship? Or is she always trying to create problems between us? I thought about the last few conversations I'd had with Rachel. She had asked if everything was okay. She'd mentioned that I seemed different, quieter. She'd suggested Marcus was a bit controlling about my time. At the time, I defended him. Now, hearing Marcus articulate it, Rachel's concerns felt like criticism, like she was trying to sabotage my happiness. Maybe you're right, I heard myself say. Maybe some space would be good. Marcus's smile returned. I just want you to have friends who genuinely care about you, who want to see us succeed as a couple. I didn't call Rachel back that weekend, or the next. By the time another month had passed, the friendship had faded into occasional, awkward text messages. My family was next. Sunday dinners at my parents' house had been a tradition since I moved to Seattle. But Marcus always found reasons why we couldn't go, or had to leave early. My dad was too critical of Marcus's career choices. My mother didn't respect our boundaries because she dropped by unannounced once. My younger brother was immature and disrespectful. Your family doesn't appreciate you the way I do, Marcus would say. They still treat you like a child. Don't you want to build our own traditions? Our own family. Visits became monthly, then every few months. Phone calls became shorter and less frequent. When my mother expressed concern, I bristled. Marcus had predicted this, that they wouldn't understand our desire for independence. We're building our life together, I told my mother. I'm an adult. I don't need to check in all the time. The hurt in her voice should have been a wake-up call. Instead, I felt vindicated. Marcus had been right, they didn't understand us. Work became my only social outlet, but even that was being systematically eliminated. Marcus had started calling me throughout the day. Just checking in. Just wanted to hear my voice. Just wondering what I was doing. If I didn't answer immediately, there would be multiple missed calls and texts. Is everything okay? Why aren't you answering? I'm worried. Call me. I started keeping my phone on my desk, interrupting meetings and conversations to respond to Marcus immediately. My boss noticed. Sarah, is everything all right at home? You seem distracted. Everything's fine, I lied. Marcus just worries when he can't reach me. My boss, a woman in her 50s who'd been through her own divorce, gave me a long look. That seems like a lot of check-ins. I laughed it off, but her concern nagged at me. Was it too much? But no, Marcus loved me. He was concerned. That's what partners did, right? The sex changed too. It had always been good between us, passionate, connected. But now there were rules. Marcus wanted to know if I'd thought about anyone else during the day. If any male coworkers had made comments. If I'd noticed anyone looking at me. I need to know you're mine, he'd say, his hands tight on my wrists. Only mine. It felt intense, possessive, which I mistook for passion. When he asked me to text him immediately after showering at the gym so he'd know I'd been safe, I complied. When he wanted me to switch to video calls during business trips so he could see where I was, I did it. Every compliance felt like proof of my love. Every boundary I surrendered felt like intimacy. My phone became a tracking device. Marcus asked me to share my location for safety. He wanted access to my email. In case something happens to you, I'll need to know how to handle your accounts. He suggested we share social media passwords because couples shouldn't have secrets. Each request made sense in isolation, but together, they formed a web that left no part of my life unsupervised. I stopped posting on social media because Marcus would analyze every photo, every caption, every interaction. Why did you like his posts? Who's that in the background? That comment seems flirty. Do you not see how inappropriate that is? I stopped going to the gym because Marcus worried about the type of men who went there. I stopped taking my evening walks because it was dangerous and made him anxious. I stopped buying books because we were saving money and I could read his selections instead. My world narrowed to our apartment, my commute with Marcus, and my desk at work. Every decision was filtered through what would make Marcus comfortable. Every thought was second-guessed against what Marcus would think. And the terrifying part? I didn't even realize it was happening. Each change was small. Each concession was reasonable when Marcus explained it. Each sacrifice was proof of my commitment. I'd become a ghost in my own life, haunting spaces I was no longer fully present in, saying words that weren't quite my own, living a routine that someone else had designed. But I told myself I was happy. I had to be happy. Because if I wasn't, if all these sacrifices were for nothing, then what did that make me? The incident that changed everything happened on a Thursday in March, 1 year into living with Marcus. I was at work when my phone buzzed with a text from my mother. Your father's in the hospital. Heart attack. It's serious. Please come. My hands shook as I grabbed my purse and rushed to tell my boss I needed to leave immediately. She waved me off with concern in her eyes.
Go.
Family comes first. I tried calling Marcus from the elevator. No answer. I texted. Emergency. Dad's in hospital. Taking cab there now. His response came 30 seconds later. Wait. I'll pick you up. Don't get in a cab alone. It's an emergency. I can't wait.
Sarah, wait.
I'm leaving now. 10 minutes. I stared at my phone, my father's life potentially hanging in the balance, and felt the familiar pull of compliance. Wait for Marcus. Don't make him worry. Don't make him angry. Instead, I stepped outside and hailed a cab. My phone exploded with calls and texts during the 20-minute ride. I silenced it, my heart pounding with an anxiety that had nothing to do with my father and everything to do with what I'd just done. I'd disobeyed. My father was stable when I arrived. A minor heart attack, the doctors said, but a warning sign. My mother was shaken but holding together. My brother arrived minutes after me. We waited together for the cardiologist's full assessment, holding hands in the antiseptic hospital waiting room. Marcus arrived an hour later. I saw him before he saw me, striding through the emergency room doors, his face a thundercloud. When his eyes found me, sitting with my family, something flickered across his expression. Relief? Anger?
Both.
Sarah, he said, his voice carefully controlled. I've been trying to reach you. I know.
I'm sorry.
It was an emergency. You got in a cab alone. He said it quietly, but everyone heard. My mother's eyes widened. My brother frowned. My father had a heart attack, Marcus. I understand that. He sat down next to me, taking my hand in a grip that was just slightly too tight. But we have rules about your safety. Those rules don't disappear because of emergencies. The word hung in the air. Rules. My brother spoke up. Dude, her dad was in the hospital. Marcus's smile was cold. I'm talking to Sarah. The awkwardness was suffocating. My mother looked between us, confusion and concern etched on her face. I pulled my hand from Marcus's grip. Can we talk about this later? Please. Of course. His voice was pleasant again, but I saw the tightness around his eyes. I'm here for you, baby. For your whole family. But he wasn't. He sat rigid and silent, checking his phone constantly, making it clear he was annoyed to be there. When I tried to talk to my family, he'd interrupt with questions. How much longer will this take? Don't you think your mother needs rest? They don't need all of us here. After 3 hours, My father was moved to a regular room and declared out of immediate danger. The relief was overwhelming. I hugged my mother, tears finally coming. Marcus pulled me aside. Time to go. You've done what you needed to do. I want to stay a bit longer. Sarah. His voice was sharp, then immediately softened. You're exhausted. You're not thinking clearly. I'm taking you home. Something inside me resisted. I'm staying. His expression froze. For a moment, I saw something in his eyes that I'd never seen before, something cold and calculating. Then it was gone, replaced by hurt.
Fine. Stay.
I can see your family is more important than respecting our relationship. He walked out, leaving me standing in the hospital corridor, shaking. I stayed for 2 more hours, but couldn't focus on anything except my phone, still silent, no messages from Marcus. The anxiety built until I felt physically sick. When I finally got home, in a cab that I took without asking permission, Marcus was sitting in the dark living room. Marcus. The lights flipped on. He was calm, collected, nothing like I'd expected.
Sit down, Sarah.
We need to talk about what happened today. I sat, still wearing my coat. I'm sorry I didn't wait. Do you understand what you did? He leaned forward, his voice reasonable, almost gentle. You broke my trust. You disrespected our relationship. You put yourself in danger, and then ignored my concerns for hours. My father. Your father was already being cared for by medical professionals. Your being there or not being there changed nothing about his medical outcome. What did change is our relationship. What did change is my ability to trust you. The argument was so twisted, so clearly wrong, but delivered with such certainty that I found myself doubting my own reality. I needed to be there for my family, and I needed you to be safe. I needed you to respect our agreements. Instead, you chose them over me. He stood up, pacing. Maybe I've been too lenient. Maybe I've given you too much freedom, and you've forgotten what we're building here. Freedom? The word came out as a whisper. Yes, freedom. The freedom to make decisions without considering how they affect me. The freedom to prioritize everyone else over our relationship. The freedom to disrespect the boundaries we've set together. We hadn't set them together. He had. The realization hit me like cold water. I started, then stopped. What did I think? That this was wrong? That I wanted out? The thoughts were there, but saying them out loud felt impossible. Dangerous. Marcus sat down next to me, his anger apparently spent. I love you, Sarah. Everything I do is because I love you. But love requires respect. It requires trust.
Can you give me that?
He looked so earnest, so wounded. The man I'd fallen in love with, not the controlling stranger who'd been revealed in the hospital. Yes, I heard myself say. I'm sorry. He pulled me close, and I felt him relax. That's my girl. We'll get through this. But you understand there have to be consequences, right? I can't just let this go. Consequences. My stomach dropped. What kind of consequences? Well, clearly you're not ready for the responsibility of independent transportation. I'll be driving you everywhere from now on. Not just to work, everywhere. And your phone location sharing stays on at all times. If you turn it off, even accidentally, there will be a problem. I nodded, numb. And I think some distance from your family might be good. They clearly don't respect our relationship. Maybe a few months, without visits, would help everyone get some perspective. Marcus, my father just had a heart attack. Which is why I'm allowing phone calls.
See?
I'm being reasonable. I'm compromising. He kissed my forehead. I'm not the bad guy here, Sarah. I'm just trying to protect what we have. I went to bed that night feeling like I was drowning. But the worst part wasn't the new rules or the isolation. It was the tiny voice in my head that agreed with him. That said I'd been selfish. That said I deserved consequences. That voice, I realized much later, wasn't mine. It was his. The turning point came from an unexpected source, a training video at work. Our company had implemented mandatory harassment and abuse awareness training. I'd rolled my eyes at the announcement. Just another corporate requirement to check a box. But my boss insisted everyone attend, no exceptions. The training was led by a counselor from a local women's shelter. She was in her 50s, with kind eyes and a no-nonsense demeanor. She started with statistics about workplace harassment, then pivoted to something else. We're also going to talk about intimate partner violence, she said. Because statistically, 1 in 4 women in this room will experience it in their lifetime. And most won't recognize it when it's happening to them. She put up a slide titled Signs of Coercive Control. I was barely paying attention, doodling in my notebook, when I heard her read the list. Isolating you from friends and family, monitoring your communications, controlling your finances, dictating what you wear, tracking your location, making you account for all your time, treating you like a child or a possession rather than a partner. Every word hit like a physical blow. The thing about coercive control, she continued, is that it's insidious. It doesn't start with violence. It starts with love, with concern, with someone who cares so much they just want to keep you safe. But over time, that care becomes a cage. My hand was shaking so badly, I dropped my pen. Emma, sitting next to me, picked it up and gave me a concerned look. I couldn't meet her eyes. The counselor showed a video testimony from a survivor. The woman described her relationship in painful detail, the gradual isolation, the constant monitoring, the way her partner convinced her that every restriction was for her own good. She described feeling like she was going crazy, doubting her own perceptions, believing she was the problem. It was my story, told by a stranger's voice. If you recognize yourself in these descriptions, the counselor said at the end, I want you to know something crucial. It's not your fault. You're not weak. You're not stupid. These dynamics are deliberately designed to trap you. And there is a way out. She provided resources, hotline numbers, shelter information, safety planning guides. I took a photo of the slide with trembling hands. That night, I couldn't sleep. Marcus was snoring beside me, his arm possessively draped across my stomach. I stared at the ceiling, replaying 3 years of my life through a new lens. The concern about my safety, the advice about my friendships, the partnership that left me penniless and powerless, the love that required total submission. It wasn't love. It was control. And I'd surrendered to it willingly, one small compromise at a time. The realization was both liberating and terrifying, because now I had to decide, what was I going to do about it? I couldn't just leave. I had no money. Every penny I earned went into an account I couldn't access. I had no car. My phone was tracked. My friendships had deteriorated. My family was kept at arm's length. I'd become so isolated that I couldn't even remember the last time I'd been alone in public. The shelter resources from the training became my secret lifeline. I memorized the hotline number, not daring to save it in my phone. During my lunch break at work, one of the few times I was alone, I'd step into a bathroom stall and look at the safety planning resources on the public Wi-Fi, clearing my browser history immediately after. I learned that leaving was the most dangerous time, that abusers escalate when they sense loss of control, that I needed a plan, resources, and above all, secrecy. I started small. During grocery trips with Marcus, I'd request cash back, $10 or $20 at a time, telling him I needed it for the parking meter or coffee. He'd approve these tiny amounts without suspicion. I hid the money in a tampon box under the bathroom sink, the one place I knew Marcus would never look. At work, I began rebuilding connections. I apologized to Emma for being distant. I've been going through something, I told her vaguely. I'm sorry I've been such a bad friend. Emma hugged me. I'm just glad you're talking to me again.
I've been worried about you.
I didn't tell her everything, not yet. But having one person who cared felt like oxygen after drowning. I called my mother from the office phone when Marcus thought I was in a meeting. Mom, I'm sorry I've been so distant. Her voice cracked. Oh, honey, we've been so worried. Marcus said you needed space, but... Mom, I need you to trust me. I can't explain everything right now, but I might need help soon. If I call you and tell you to come get me, can you do it? No questions, just come. There was a long pause. Then, of course, whatever you need. Should I be worried? Not yet. but maybe soon. I love you. I love you too, baby. I researched domestic violence laws in Washington state. I learned about protection orders, about what evidence I'd need, about how to leave safely. I learned that once I left, I could never go back, that returns are when violence usually escalates to lethality. The knowledge was empowering and terrifying in equal measure. I also had to confront an uncomfortable truth. I still loved Marcus. Not the man he'd become, but the man he'd pretended to be. The charming, attentive man who'd made me feel special. That man didn't exist, I realized. He'd never existed. He'd been a mask worn by a controller, specifically designed to trap me. Grieving that fantasy while planning my escape was its own kind of torture. Marcus sensed something was different. He became more attentive, more suspicious. He started checking my phone more frequently, reading through my texts and emails. Fortunately, I'd been careful. All my research had been done on work computers or the brief moments I could access the library computers near my office, using incognito mode every time. "You seem distant," he said one evening. "Are you unhappy?" The question was a trap. If I said yes, he'd want to know why, and he'd find a way to make it my fault or tighten his control further. If I said no too enthusiastically, he'd know I was lying. "I've just been stressed about work," I said carefully. "Big project coming up." "You know you can quit anytime," he reminded me. "I make enough for both of us. You don't need the stress of work." It was his latest suggestion, that I quit my job and depend on him entirely. I'd been deflecting for weeks, sensing that this was a line I couldn't cross. Work was my only window to the outside world, my only source of social interaction, my only space away from his surveillance. "I like my job," I said firmly. "It's important to me." His expression cooled. "More important than our relationship." "That's not what I said." "It's what you implied. You'd rather be stressed at some meaningless job than focus on building our home, our future." We'd had this argument multiple times. Each time, Marcus pushed harder. I knew I was running out of time. Eventually, he'd force the issue, and I'd either have to quit or face consequences I didn't want to imagine. I needed to leave.
Soon.
I set a date. 3 weeks from that day. 3 weeks to save enough money for a security deposit and first month's rent somewhere. 3 weeks to finalize my plan. 3 weeks to gather the courage to actually do it. I marked it on my work calendar as doctor's appointment. Marcus sometimes checked my work calendar, so I needed a plausible cover. He wouldn't question a doctor's visit, as long as he could drive me there and back. Except I wouldn't be coming back. In 3 weeks, on a Tuesday morning, I would get in the car with Marcus. He would drop me at a medical building downtown, and I would walk out the back and trance into a new life. Or that was the plan anyway. In my experience with Marcus, plans rarely survived contact with reality. The 3 weeks crawled by like years. Every day felt like walking through a minefield, trying not to trigger Marcus's suspicions while moving my plan forward inch by inch. I'd saved $340, not much, but enough for a cheap motel room while I figured out next steps. Emma had agreed to let me stay with her after the first night, though I hadn't told her why yet. My mother was on standby, ready to drive down from Bellingham if I needed her. I'd packed a bag, just essentials, hidden in my gym locker at work, a change of clothes, my passport, my birth certificate, my old laptop, and printed copies of our financial records that I'd sneaked photos of over several weeks. Everything else I'd have to leave behind. The morning of my escape, I woke up with my heart hammering so hard I thought Marcus would hear it. But he was in his usual good mood, humming as he made breakfast, completely unaware that this was the last morning we'd wake up together. "Big doctor's appointment today," he said, sliding scrambled eggs onto my plate. "What's it for again?" "Annual checkup." I lied smoothly. I'd been practicing this lie for weeks. You know, the whole thing. Blood work, exam, the works. "Want me to come in with you?" My blood ran cold. This wasn't part of the plan. "No, that's okay. It's just routine stuff. Boring." "I don't mind. I can take the morning off." "Marcus, it's a gynecological exam. I'd rather you didn't sit in for that." He looked uncomfortable, exactly as I'd hoped.
Right.
"Of course. I'll just wait in the car." It might take a couple hours. Why don't you go to that coffee shop you like? I'll text you when I'm done. He considered this, and I held my breath. Everything hinged on him agreeing to leave me alone at that medical building. Okay, he finally said. But keep your location sharing on. And text me every 30 minutes so I know you're okay. Of course. The drive to the medical building was surreal. I watched the streets of Seattle pass by, knowing I was seeing them for the last time as Marcus's girlfriend. He reached over and squeezed my hand. Love you, baby. Love you too, I said automatically, and realized with a shock that I meant it in some twisted way. I loved the man I thought he was. I just didn't love the man he actually was. He pulled up to the medical building at 9:15 a.m. Text me when you're going in. And when you're done. And if anything weird happens, I will. I walked into the building, my legs shaking. I waited in the lobby for 5 minutes, long enough to see Marcus's car pull away, then texted him. Going in now.
Talk soon.
Red heart. Then I turned off my phone. My hands were trembling so badly, I could barely work the power button. This was it. The moment Marcus realized my location was offline, he'd panic. He'd call, text, probably come back to the building. I had maybe 30 minutes before all hell broke loose. I walked out the back entrance into a parking lot. Emma was waiting in her car, engine running. I told her yesterday that I needed help getting away from an unhealthy situation. She'd asked no questions, just said, tell me when and where. Drive, I said as I got in. Please just drive. She did, pulling out of the lot quickly. Where are we going? Anywhere. Away. My phone was in my purse, turned off, becoming a tracking device the moment I powered it back on. I needed to get to my gym, get my bag, then disappear. There's a gym on Capitol Hill, I said. Can you take me there? Emma nodded, navigating through traffic. I kept checking the rearview mirror, expecting to see Marcus's car behind us at any moment. At the gym, I ran inside, grabbed my bag from my locker, and ran back out. The whole thing took 3 minutes. Back in Emma's car, I finally let myself breathe. I have so many questions, Emma said. I know. I'll explain everything. But right now, I need to get somewhere safe. She nodded and drove toward her apartment in Fremont. My phone buzzed in my purse, turned off, but Marcus had probably activated some kind of alarm. Or maybe I was paranoid. Everything felt paranoid now. At Emma's apartment, I finally allowed myself to fall apart. I sat on her couch and cried, huge, gasping sobs that I'd been holding in for 3 years. Emma held me and didn't ask questions until I was ready to talk. When I finally told her everything, her face went through a journey of emotions, shock, anger, guilt. I knew something was wrong, she said. I should have pushed harder. I should have. No, I interrupted. This isn't your fault. None of it is your fault. I call my mother from Emma's phone.
Mom, it's me.
I left Marcus. I'm safe. I'm at a friend's place. She didn't ask why, didn't demand explanations. She just said, do you need me to come down? Not yet, but soon. I'll call you tomorrow. I love you, Sarah. I love you too. The next call was harder. I needed to call the domestic violence hotline to get advice on next steps. The counselor I spoke with was calm, professional, and incredibly kind. You did the hardest part, she said. You left. Now, we need to keep you safe. Has he been physically violent?
No.
It's all been control, isolation, psychological stuff. That's still abuse. It still matters. You can file for a protection order based on coercive control. Let me connect you with a legal advocate. Over the next few hours, I learned about my options. A protection order. Accessing my bank accounts. Turns out, joint accounts can be frozen and divided during a separation. Getting my belongings from the apartment with a police escort. Changing my phone number. Protecting my work address. Emma ordered pizza, which I couldn't eat. My stomach was in knots. Because even though I'd escaped, I knew Marcus wouldn't let this go quietly. Sure enough, by evening, the messages started coming. Emma's phone. He must have looked up her number. Then my work email. Then a message through LinkedIn. Sarah, please talk to me. I don't understand what happened. If I did something wrong, let's discuss it. You're breaking my heart. This isn't you. Someone's gotten in your head. I just want to talk.
Please.
I love you. I love you so much. The messages grew more desperate, more manipulative. Then angry. You're making a huge mistake. You'll regret this. Everything I did was for you. You're ungrateful and selfish. Good luck surviving without me. I read them with Emma looking over my shoulder. Jesus, she whispered. He's unhinged. He's scared, I said, surprising myself with the insight. He's losing control, and that terrifies him more than losing me. That night, I didn't sleep. I lay in Emma's guest room, listening to every sound, convinced Marcus would somehow find me. He knew where Emma worked. Would he go there? Would he figure out we were friends and track down her address? But nothing happened. The night passed quietly. And when the sun rose on my first full day of freedom, I realized something profound. I'd done it. I'd actually done it. For the first time in 3 years, I'd woken up without someone dictating how my day would go. Without rules. Without surveillance. Without fear. I was free. The first week after leaving Marcus was the hardest. Not because I missed him, though I missed the fantasy of who I'd thought he was, but because I had to rebuild an entire life from scratch while looking over my shoulder constantly. With the help of the domestic violence advocate, I filed for a protection order. The hearing was scheduled for 2 weeks out. In the meantime, I had a temporary order that required Marcus to stay at least 500 feet away from me, my workplace, and Emma's apartment. He violated it on day 3. I was walking to a coffee shop near Emma's place when I saw his car parked across the street. My blood went cold. He was sitting in the driver's seat, watching me. For a moment, we made eye contact. He didn't approach, didn't wave, didn't do anything technically illegal. He just watched, making sure I knew he was there, making sure I knew he could find me. I turned around and walked back to Emma's apartment, my hands shaking so badly I could barely work the lock. I called the police and reported the violation. They took a report but explained that without him actually approaching me, it was hard to prove intent. Keep documenting everything, the officer said. Every sighting, every message, every contact. It builds a pattern. Marcus's messages continued, despite the protection order. He created new email addresses when I blocked him. He sent messages through my professional social media accounts. He even had flowers delivered to Emma's apartment with a card. I'm sorry for everything. Please come home. I love you. Emma wanted to throw them in the dumpster. I took photos first, evidence for the protection order hearing. Work became complicated. My boss was supportive when I explained I was leaving an abusive relationship, but there were logistics to consider. Marcus knew where I worked. The building had security, but he could wait in the parking lot, follow me to my car, corner me in public. The company worked with me to adjust my schedule, park in a reserved spot near the entrance, and have security escort me to my car. It was humiliating and empowering in equal measure. Humiliating that I needed this level of protection, empowering that people believed me and wanted to help. The financial disentanglement was a nightmare. Marcus had frozen our joint account the moment I left, leaving me with only the $340 cash I'd saved. With my advocate's help, I filed for access to my own earnings. Marcus fought it, claiming I'd been contributing to household expenses and the money was joint marital property. We weren't married. We'd never even been engaged. But he'd positioned our relationship as a marriage in legal documents, making it harder to simply walk away. This is what financial abuse looks like, my advocate explained. He's using the legal system to maintain control. It's very common. It took 6 weeks to get access to half the account balance, $24,000 of my own paychecks from the last 3 years. I cried when I saw the money appear in my new bank account. It wasn't about the money itself. It was about having options again. I rented a small studio apartment in a building with controlled access. I bought a new phone with a new number that I gave only to trusted people. I changed my email addresses, my social media accounts, every digital footprint I could think of. I felt like a fugitive, which was insane. I'd done nothing wrong. But that's what escaping abuse felt like. As if you're the criminal, hiding, constantly afraid of being found. Therapy helped. My therapist specialized in trauma and abuse recovery. In our first session, she said something that broke through my remaining guilt. You know what's amazing? You saved yourself. You saw what was happening and you got out. A lot of people don't. I feel stupid for not seeing it sooner. Coercive control works because it's gradual. Because it's designed to make you doubt yourself. The fact that you recognized it at all, let alone acted on it, shows incredible strength. We worked on rebuilding my sense of self. Somewhere in the relationship with Marcus, I'd lost track of who Sarah was. What did I like? What did I want? What were my opinions, separate from what Marcus had told me to think? It was harder than I expected. I'd go to a restaurant and freeze, unable to decide what to order because for 3 years, Marcus had ordered for me. I'd stand in clothing stores, overwhelmed by choices because for 3 years, Marcus had approved every outfit. Simple decisions felt monumental. Important decisions felt impossible. But slowly, painfully, I rediscovered myself. I reconnected with Rachel, apologizing for disappearing. She cried and hugged me and told me she'd been waiting for my call. I almost gave up on you, she admitted. But something told me you'd come back. I rebuilt my relationship with my family. My father, recovered from his heart attack, was particularly emotional. I knew something was wrong, he said. But every time I tried to bring it up, you defend him. I didn't know how to reach you. You couldn't have, I said. I had to see it myself. The protection order hearing was surreal. Marcus showed up with a lawyer, looking hurt and confused. He testified that he'd been a devoted partner, that I'd left without explanation, that he was trying to understand what had gone wrong. He was so convincing that for a moment, I doubted myself. Had I overreacted? Had I misunderstood his concern as control? Then the judge read through the evidence. The text messages showing him tracking my location. The financial records showing I had no independent access to my own earnings. The testimony from Emma, my mother, and my former coworker about my gradual isolation. The messages violating the temporary protection order. The judge granted a 2-year protection order. Marcus's expression as he left the courtroom was something I'll never forget, a mix of rage and disbelief that the system had sided against him. His lawyer told my advocate that Marcus was deeply hurt by the proceedings and felt betrayed. I felt nothing but relief. 6 months after leaving, I got a promotion at work. The increased salary meant I could move to a bigger apartment, maybe even save for a down payment on a house eventually. More importantly, it meant I was building a future that was entirely my own. I also started volunteering at the women's shelter that had trained us at work. I wanted to help other women recognize the signs I'd missed. I wanted to be the person telling them, "You're not crazy. This is real. And you can get out." A year after leaving, I went on my first date. It was terrifying. The guy was nice, a friend of Rachel's who knew my history and was patient with my hypervigilance. When he reached across the table to hold my hand, I flinched. He pulled back immediately. "I'm sorry," I said. "It's not you. I'm just learning to trust again." "Take all the time you need," he said. The relationship didn't work out. I wasn't ready, and that was okay. But it taught me that I could date again. That I could open my heart again. That not all men were Marcus. Sometimes I still see Marcus's car in places it shouldn't be. Or I think I do. Maybe it's a similar model. Maybe it's my paranoia. I still check the protection order app that shows if he's violated the GPS boundaries. I still have nightmares about being back in that apartment, unable to leave. But I also have moments of pure joy that I'd forgotten existed. Spontaneous plans with friends. Buying clothes I actually like. Making decisions without consulting anyone. Taking walks alone. Reading books Marcus would have criticized. Being Sarah, whoever that is, without needing anyone's permission. Recovery isn't linear. Some days I feel strong and confident. Other days I feel like I'm still in that apartment, waiting for someone to tell me what to do. But I'm free. And that makes all the difference. If you're watching this and you see yourself in my story, please know, it's not your fault. You're not weak. You're not stupid. You're not letting it happen. Coercive control is designed to trap you, to make you doubt yourself, to convince you that love looks like surveillance and care looks like control. I want to leave you with the resources that saved my life. The National Domestic Violence Hotline, 1-800-799-7233. They have advocates available 24/7 who can help you safety plan, access resources, and remind you that you deserve better. There are also text and chat options if calling isn't safe. Getting out is terrifying, but staying is worse. I promise you, there is life on the other side of this. There is freedom, joy, and the ability to be yourself without permission. It won't be easy. Rebuilding is hard work, but it's worth it. If this video helped you in any way, please share it. You never know who might need to see it. And don't forget to subscribe and leave a comment about where you're watching from. Your engagement helps this story reach others who might need it. You deserve a life where you can breathe, where you can make choices, where you can be yourself. You deserve to be free.